Good morning, everybody. I might look a strange Paul Skinner, Councillor Paul Skinner this morning. My name's Robert Reid, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm going to hand over to Rob to start the recording. Thank you. Okay. Right. This morning, councillors and officers, unfortunately, our chairman is joining us remotely. His wife hasn't been able to, has just come out of hospital, to be really honest, so he's working from home. He'd like to do the introduction, so if our technology works correctly, Paul, are you there?
I am, Robert, thank you.
Jolly good.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this formal meeting. Rob's explained the circumstances, thank you very much. It's a formal meeting of the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny. I am, as you know, Paul Skinner. Rob Reid is the Vice Chairman, chairing today. The audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded onto the county's website following the meeting. I'd like to begin with the health and safety announcement. It's extremely safe for me. There's no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the building, that is the council chamber, through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park when we need to wait in the car park until further instructions. Before we move on with main business of the meeting, can I remind you, if you wish to ask a question, that's either virtually or otherwise, please raise your hand. Can I also remind the committee members in the chamber to switch on their microphones when invited to speak? This is so they can be heard on the recording. I'd also like to welcome officers presenting today, participating via Teams. Can I ask you to introduce yourselves at the beginning of your item or when you make a contribution? To ask questions or contribute during the meeting, please raise your hand vertically or type speak in the chat function. Requests to speak will be collated via Kyra. Can I remind everyone to ensure their mobiles and laptops and iPads are on silent, and please can you keep your questions and contributions succinct and concise. We have quite a large agenda today. Moving on, Trina, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Richard Austin will be joining us via Teams, as will you yourself, Councillor Skinner, but we haven't received any more formal apologies. Thank you.
Councillor Davey sends his apologies as well.
Thank you. Councillor Ashley Morris will be here. She's running a few minutes late.
Thank you, Chairman. It transpires that I am now a permanent member of this committee after some initial ambiguity.
Well, welcome to this committee then. I'm sure you'll find it most beneficial. I certainly do. It's very interesting topics to do with flooding and water, and a great duty to all of our public that we look after as well. Okay, so do we have any declarations of interest from any members? No? I'll take that as no? Nobody online either? Okay, so minutes of the previous meeting of the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee meeting that was held on the 20th of September. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of the last meeting as a true record. Do I have a proposer and seconder? Now, I can't do either because I was actually absent, and I will honestly admit I was in Madeira. I was here for the briefing, but not the meeting. So can I have a proposer, please? Oh, yes, okay. Councillor Ashton, thank you.
Happy to move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on from... so, seconded by Councillor Taylor, thank you. Okay, so announcements from the Chairman, Executive Councillors and lead officers. Now, just before I do that, it is with great sadness that we've learnt last week of the passing of Councillor Bob Adams on the 15th of November. Councillor Adams was the Chairman of Highways and Transport Scrutiny Committee, and previous to that served as the Chairman of this committee. Could I please ask everybody to be upstanding for a minute's silence in memory of Councillor Bob Adams? Thank you. Thank you, members. Just before moving on, I'd like to also add personally, he was a great mentor to me when I first became a councillor, particularly at South Kesteven. Moving on, we have a long agenda this morning with reports and presentations to be taking place. I always feel that's a tall order because there are many topics and the presentations have much worthiness, but I'd therefore like to ask officers to only summarise the key points of their reports and what is required by the committee. And in regard to members of this committee, to stress the importance of concise questions and contributions. Hello. Right, welcome. I think you're just over there, Pat. That's quite all right. We knew you were going to be a few minutes late. So, Executive Councillor announcements. Are there any announcements from Councillor Colin Davey, our Executive Councillor for Economic Development, Environment and Planning? Tom. Councillor Dine.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. And good morning, colleagues. In Councillor Davies' absence, I'm pleased to be with you all this morning, and I do hope that feeling is reciprocated, Mr. Chairman. Since our last meeting, I was thrilled to join my colleague, Councillor Corey, the Executive Member for Fire and Rescue, at Rugby Fire Station to see firsthand the investment in 2 further flood pumps, taking our total Lincolnshire fleet up to 4. And I note that this will be discussed within agenda item 6, but to see the pumps in action, Mr. Chairman, as I did, with our skilled firefighters, was both an education and a reassurance. Colleagues will be aware that the Environment Bill has now passed into law, and this will bring a number of impacts to bear in the field of environmental and water management. Some of the most important of these will affect local planning policy, as the requirement to allow for biodiversity net gain aligns with emerging policy areas such as natural flood management and the ongoing implementation of sustainable drainage systems. However, more broadly, the creation of local nature recovery networks will also mean that flood risk and drainage management will work will increasingly need to provide multiple benefits if we, as a partnership of local authorities, are to make best use of opportunities arising from these policy developments. One area that we are currently developing is the Greater Lincolnshire Groundwater project, and as colleagues will be aware from the paper on this agenda, this offers us a significant opportunity to explore new ways of managing difficult flood risk issues involving a much wider range of techniques than would have been the case in traditional flood risk schemes. We are particularly keen to explore through this project how we can practically join up flood risk management, environmental enhancement and water quality improvements. Colleagues will have noticed that the tone of government policy is continuing to evolve from managing the risk of flooding to improving the resilience of communities and local economies faced with these risks, along with their capacity to recover and grow into the future. Again, this is an important aspect of the groundwater project, Mr. Chairman, but also is a key factor in the way in which we work in partnership on matters of coastal and estuary management. In future meetings, we expect to explore all of these areas in more detail as initiatives develop and grow. And finally, Mr. Chairman, as it's the final Flood and Water Management Committee meeting of the year, both Councillor Davey and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dyer. We hope that it will be and that we won't have a repeat of last year when one ended up with galoshes and Wellingtons and everything else as we go. So, senior officers, are there any announcements from the lead officers, either Justin Brown, David Hickman, who is with us today, or Vanessa Strange, please?
Thank you, Chairman. No, I think Councillor Dyer's put it extremely well. I don't have any other matters to cover, I don't think.
Thank you very much, David. Okay, none of this. Okay, so item 5, the Flood and Coastal Innovation Programme, the Greater Lincolnshire Groundwater Project. This item is on pages 17 to 20 in the agenda pack, and the item provides an update on progress of the Greater Lincolnshire Groundwater Project and sets out the next steps in developing an outline business case. The report will be presented by Matthew Harrison, our Senior Commissioning Officer for Flood Risk, who is here with us in the chambers. The actions that we are evoking on is that the committee is invited to consider and comment on the report and provide with guidance as required to help shape the outline business case that will be submitted in April 2022. Before passing over to Matthew, my fingers are crossed with sort of the delivery and the journey and hopefully the positive outcome that our bid will make for a reasonable settlement for the whole of Lincolnshire. So Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everybody. If I may, I will take the paper as read and just noting some of the outline given in the Executive Council announcements. I'll just pick up on some of the key points here in the paper for discussion. So briefly, £200 million was awarded by government last year for the Flood and Coastal Resilience Innovation Programme, and that was distributed amongst 25 local areas, which is to be delivered between the 1st of April of this year, 2021, and runs through to the 31st of March 2027. Lincolnshire County Council, along with key partners and stakeholders, is leading on the development of a collaborative approach to look at groundwater issues. So this is a Greater Lincolnshire project covering North Lincolnshire Council, North East Lincolnshire Council, as well as ourselves. Our lead role is that, as acknowledged as part of the programme, in our role as lead local flood authority. So the partnership prepared an expression of interest to look at groundwater in Lincolnshire. Some of the key objectives being, as has already been said, to identify opportunities to manage groundwater in a sustainable way that benefits flood risk as well as the environment, to look at improving Greater Lincolnshire's resilience to groundwater flooding, so homes, businesses, local communities and natural capital are better protected and better prepared, to build on community resilience, to communicate and share the learning regionally and nationally that we take from this programme, and to improve the capability to provide an emergency response to groundwater flooding. So all projects have to develop an outline business case, has been said, and this is the key focus of the partnership at the moment, and that outline business case has to be completed by April 2022. The key focus of the outline business case is to work with some consultants, have detailed modelling on the Lincolnshire chalk and Lincolnshire limestone groundwater models, which will be fundamental in how we take forward the information in developing our bid and shape what we take forward. There is work that will be starting shortly on that, and that will be an iterative process which will continue throughout the duration of this project and, as I say, shape some of the outcomes that we all wish to see. So this programme really does provide an opportunity to develop understanding on a broad range of groundwater risks and opportunities, something that currently is much less understood than, for example, the surface water and coastal flooding that we often experience. This will hopefully lead to some practical actions delivered by the partnership, which is certainly the intention, but also some key learning as well. So once the outline business case has been submitted and approved, the partnership will then be committed to delivering on the objectives set out in the project, as I outlined. So for now, comments and guidance by members of this committee will be most welcome on the process and the project as a whole as we continue to develop this further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Kyra, are you being me this morning, or? Okay. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chairman. Reading the report and being new to the committee, could you explain to me why there's 150 million of the 200 being allocated? Whereabouts is the other 50 million?
Yeah, I can answer that, Councillor. The government allocated 150 million of that, as you say, to the 25 local projects. They allocated the 50 million into large-scale strategic schemes, including the Humber strategy led by the Environment Agency and others at that sort of scale. So those have been allocated nationally. The rest of it has been put into a pot to be distributed at a more local level.
Thank you. Any other members? No other questions. Okay, fine. Well, I did open this debate. Thank you, Matthew, with having my fingers crossed. They will remain crossed. The challenge is set, and we sincerely hope that the bidding will afford us the monies that we so rightly and desperately need to move the work forward over the next tranche of years. So the proposal is that I move that the committee receives the report and requests that our comments are recorded to be taken into account. Does anybody dissent? No? Okay, fine. So thank you. That is agreed. Turning now to item 6 for this morning. Very exciting agenda item, fire and rescue flood pump capability. The item is in the agenda from pages 21 to 28 and provides an overview of the trailer-mounted flood pumps which have been secured through the lead flood, local flood authority funding. The report is presented by Mark Baxter, our Chief Fire Officer. So the committee is invited to consider and comment on the presentation and highlight any additional areas for consideration. Good morning, Mark, and over to you, please.
Good morning, all, and thank you for inviting me to the meeting. I think we're just going to try sharing the actual presentation onto the screen, particularly for those who are online. So I think it's just coming up now, I believe. While that's coming on, so this the presentation is really just to give the committee an overview of the trailer-mounted pumps that we have within the service that has been a partnership procurement with Lead Local Flood Authority, with Environment Agency and Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue. And I just want to give a bit of an opportunity just to explain what these trailer-mounted flood pumps, what their capabilities are, and then how we're going to be using them. So it's probably just a question: is people able to see the presentation on the screen?
No, we're struggling just at the moment. Just bear with us, please, for a moment, Mark.
No worries at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe, Mark, that the technology's taking the lead of my abilities, but are we there, Karen? Yep, we're there. Thank you very much. Off you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Absolutely, as Councillor Dyer kindly pointed out, these are the trailer-mounted flood pumps that we have on our station. So a little bit of the background is clearly the council, we all have plans to deal with the flood emergencies. We know it's one of our highest risks that we need to respond to. For localised floods, low-level floods, this is all coordinated, as you all know, through the Lead Local Flood Authority, and we're always keen that we do this in a partnership arrangement. So particularly in regards to our role, the Fire and Rescue's role, we do all of our preparedness and our response in partnership, in particular with LCC Highways, district councils, other local companies, our IDBs and environmental agencies. And where we're recognising is particularly learning from other flooding incidents that we've got plenty of opportunity to gather learning from is there was an opportunity for us to fill a gap of how we can provide protracted flooding capabilities in strategic areas within the county. So if I just go on to the next slide, please. So we did this through the partnership approach. Back in 2017, we had entered into an agreement to procure 2 trailer-mounted pumps and 2 Isuzu trucks, and we were utilising them for 2 or 3 years, and really recognised the value in those the trailer-mounted pumps and the Isuzu trucks that come with it. And so within 2020, we managed to get an opportunity to secure funding through LFFA to provide another 2 mounted pumps and 2 Isuzu trucks. The real benefits for ourselves that these can be dispatched with a crew of 4 and then left in situ with a crew of 2. This for fire and rescue is a great advantage, because up until that point where we needed to have resources for protracted flood incidents, we had to commit several fire appliances. Now we're able to utilise those fire appliances in other areas, make them available for other incidents by keeping these bespoke flood-mounted pumps with just a crew of 2 for protracted time. So it really does save a lot of capacity and commitment for fire and rescue. So next slide, please. Probably a little bit of technical information just out of interest. So the capability that they pump around 88 litres per second. It's just really putting that in context. Our fire appliances only pump 33 litres per second, but our high volume pump that we've got one within the county pumps 116 litres per second. I think the bit that just really what that highlights for ourselves is up until previously this, it was our fire appliances that did the bulk of our pumping. Now fire appliances aren't bespoke flood pumping appliances, that they are there to push water out to put out fires. But actually these dedicated mounted pumps do actually give us a really good high level of capability in moving the water from one place to another. The other real element which I think is important is the Isuzu trucks that have come with these pumps. Absolutely integral for the whole capability, because actually we was keen that they are all-wheel drive. They have the capacity to carry all the supplementary equipment. They can get to access to as many areas that we can. We do often find that where these flood pumps are needed are usually in quite inaccessible areas. So it's important that we've got the all-wheel drive capability. And also that those vehicles can be used for other emergency events and also support other partner agencies as and when required through severe weather events as well. Next slide, please. So as I said, we've got these located at 4 of our stations at Alford, Gainsborough, Holbeach and Rugby. There's the basis of those locations is we do link into a lot of our historic flood areas. We do link into trying to get more of an understanding, particularly through with our work with EA, where future flood risks will be. But we also have to balance that out in regards to the establishment of those stations and their ability to carry out the maintenance training that comes with those flood pumps. So there's quite a few dimensions that came into play in regards to identifying where those locations are. But we recognise that these flood pumps aren't always the first hit, the first response. Our fire appliances will always be the first response when we have flooding incidents, to ensure that we do respond very timely. Once we assess what's probably going to be the best capability, these pumps are located strategically so we can get the travel distance to respond to those local areas. So that's the reasons why they are in those 4 areas. There's quite a bit of dynamics that need to work out the best place to have them placed, but also that they can be, their availability can be maintained as much as reasonably possible. And next slide, please. So really just a bit of an overview of how they've been utilised. Clearly, we've had quite a few significant flooding events over the last few years, over at Cherry Willingham, Grantham in particular, and obviously the Wainfleet flooding events were probably our largest incidents of note. It absolutely enabled our resources to be dispatched far more effectively and not tie up our first response appliances. So it enabled more appliances to be available for our other business as usual, because we still have fires to attend, we still have RTCs to attend. So it did increase our availability, but also giving us a far more effective flood response. There have been dispatched to several class minor flooding events where we would have normally have dispatched 3 or 4 appliances to. But again, as I mentioned with the Isuzu trucks, they've also been used in other severe weather events such as the Beast of the East that help provide operational cover, access, being able to support getting other emergency services to really hard to reach locations. And they're also helped to support some of our corresponding duties, particularly at Rugby Station. So ensure that we can carry out some of our well-being and on our health agenda. So the investment in these capabilities does cut across quite a few of our strategic objectives, really. So, and so I'll pause at that point. I'm conscious that's quite a whistle-stop overview, but it was just really just a bit of an opportunity to give an overview of the capabilities that we've had and to give you a bit of an overview of the investment that the partnership have gone towards to ensure that we can have a far more effective response to the flooding within the county, really. And I'm happy to open to questions.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the presentation. I think Councillor Fleetwood is the first person that would like to be invited to speak. Councillor Fleetwood, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I wholeheartedly support the deployment of these pumps. A couple of years ago in Stainfield Fen, there was a vast flooding in Lincolnshire. It made national news. It made an awful lot more. And it took some days for the Environment Agency to pull pumps in to actually start pumping at that location. Those pumps were somewhat larger than these, but obviously very necessary. Some of the drainage boards also have pumps pulled by Isuzu trailers. So in the whole network of Lincolnshire and trying to pump out locations, it's very useful to have an additional 2 trucks. And I note, the comments about Cherry Willingham, another area I represent, where some time ago, a couple of years ago again, We had fire engines wholeheartedly pumping for days at a time on the roadside, pumping out water out of a basin at the bottom of the village. Because these pumps actually utilise nearly 3 times the capacity, it will hopefully drain out areas quicker. That's all the positives. Now, a little bit of a negative for you. If you've been looking across social media recently, you'll notice the nights have been drawing in, and I notice there's an awful lot of farming communities reporting theft. And I see some very nice, bright, shiny Ivor Williams trailers and some very nice pumps, which are going to be deployed in rural locations, potentially, well away from anywhere. So I hope there is some level of security attached to these vehicles for when they are left on site, so that they don't disappear out of the county.
Absolutely, Councillor. Thank you for that. I wholeheartedly agree. I think the capability we've got, if I can just touch on your first comment, is absolutely it's a blended partnership approach. We as a fire and rescue service, we will always be there to do the first timely response, whether it's through a fire appliances, through these flood-mounted pumps, or even through a high volume pump, and then we can really have an evaluation of what the longer term resource implication is going to be required, and that's why we have some really good, strong links in regards to EA with our IDBs to look at how we can utilise all of our resources in the best place, recognising that EA and IDBs they have some absolutely fantastic flood pumps capabilities, but actually the mobilising of them may not always be as timely, and also the resources may also be needed in various ways. So actually bringing all the capabilities together does give us a really good blended approach. To offer you a bit of some assurance in regards to the security issue, we wouldn't leave these in situ without having at least 2 crew members being with it at all times, and it is because of exactly that reasons. We're recognising the security issues, and also we want to ensure that actually, if for whatever reason there's something that there is a maintenance issue with it, we can call in somebody to ensure that that pump does still continue. So the capability commitment for ourselves has moved significantly away from having a fire appliances and 4 to 5 people to just having 2 people that we can bring in to actually support that pump. But no, we wouldn't leave it in situ on its own.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Kyra, have we got an? Just myself. Okay, fine. I have a feeling that perhaps what Councillor Baxter and I might be wishing to address might be very similar. For me, it's really welcome to see the addition of these pumps. Where they actually are, Lincolnshire is a very, very big county, and our nearest one for the south of the county is Gainsborough. My concern is the time of response. Their ability and their agility seems to be quite amazing, but I draw upon members in the future to join with me in actually lobbying to see if we could get the 4 sites possibly to 6, so that both the south and the very north could have some more immediate coverage. So I look forward to support and would like that action to be and comment to be noted. Councillor Baxter, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Your telepathy is moderate today. Yes, Holbeach is in the south of the county, isn't it? Okay. So my question was, is 4 of these enough for a county the size of ours? My second question is, wouldn't you need more than 1 at the same time? Because if you have flooding in the south, you'd want 4 in the south. If you had flooding in the north, you'd want 4 in the north, wouldn't you? And also on a technical question, how far can you pump the water? I don't know the technology involved, but how do you get the water away from the site?
Okay. Thank you very much. Mark, would you like to reply for us and answer those concerns? Thank you.
Absolutely. I don't disagree. Personally, yes, I would also welcome having a couple of additional these pumps within the south of the county. Absolutely recognise how that would give a far more level of assurance in regards to coverage within the county. Again, I probably would still also always offer the comfort that the fact that these trailer-mounted flood pumps aren't our only flood capability. We do, as I said, all of our first line appliances have the ability and would be our first response to going to any flooding events and start the pumping until we evaluated what type of flooding capability we do require. We do have our high volume pump that is located predominantly down at Donington, which is in the south of the county, which does give us the significant highest level of pumping ability within the county. But having said that, absolutely, it would be beneficial if we had two more of those resources to ensure that we have got that high level of assurance. In regards to the technical question, so in regards to where we move the water to, within the flood pump and also within additional ancillary equipment within the Isuzu truck, we have a dedicated hose that enables the water to be moved to whichever location, and it's also been designed that the couplings are that we can link into either other local flooding pipes or our own appliance hoses as well, so ensure that we can move the water as far away as we need to move it into a safe area. So a part of the whole of the assessment of where the flood pump goes is absolutely the first thing is where do we want the water to go? Otherwise, there is often the risk we're just moving it from point A to point B and not actually making an awful lot of difference. So it's not necessarily a question of how much of a throw we have. It's in regards to how much the ancillary equipment we've got, and the pumps have. And again, forgive me not knowing the exact details, but they have sufficient pressure in regards to that to move the water over several kilometres if it was required. I hope that answers the question.
Mark. Okay, so with no other people indicating they wish to contribute, I'd like to move that we receive the report and request that our comments, as recorded, to be taken into account. And I'd like to particularly stress, which seems to have come out of debate, the word resources. And I know Mark will also be very pleased to receive those efforts to see if we can get them extended further. Do I have anybody that wishes to dissent to please indicate? Okay, thank you. That is agreed.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on now to the consultation on the second cycle for flood risk management plans. This item is on pages 29 to 34 of the agenda pack. This item provides an overview of the plans and consultation exercise in advance of a formal response being provided by Lincolnshire County Council. The report is going to be presented again by Matthew Harrison shortly. The committee is invited to consider and comment on the consultation of the flood risk management plans. I don't like acronyms, so I won't bother with that bit. Prior to a formal response being provided by the authority in advance of the consultation deadline, which is on the 21st of January 2022. So again, Matthew, over to you to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and once again, if I may, I will take the report as read and again just pick out some of the key points for members of the committee. So the Environment Agency have produced draft flood risk management plans for England to cover the period 2021 to 2027. And this second cycle now forms part of a 3-month public consultation, which is now open, running from the 22nd of October, on the 22nd of October, running through to the 21st of January. Flood risk management plans are strategic plans that set out how to manage flood risk in nationally identified flood risk areas for the period stated, and they are statutory plans required by the flood risk regulations. River basin districts are how these areas are covered, and for Lincolnshire we are covered by two. We fall into two river basin districts. That's the Humber and Anglian river basin districts, so we will be commenting upon both as part of our consultation response. There are a number of new features for the flood risk management plans this time round. They are strategic and focus on areas where the risk of flooding has been identified as nationally significant. And they will be far more accessible, making greater use of online mapping such as Flood Plan Explorer. The plans will also help to inform and drive existing programmes of work, such as the Programme of Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management Schemes, and they will explore wider resilience measures like nature-based solutions for flood and water, and to set longer-term adaptive approaches for taking action at the right time. In developing the plans, it should be noted that in Lincolnshire we have no designated flood risk areas within the county for our responsibility as LLFA for surface water, groundwater and ordinary watercourses. However, the Environment Agency do have designated flood risk areas in their role as Risk Management Authority, and in Lincolnshire these include Louth, Boston, Horncastle, Lincoln, Mablethorpe, Skegness and Spalding. These areas are identified as at risk from river or coastal flooding. So officers will be reviewing and responding to the consultation on these plans for the Humber and Anglian River Basin areas, which cover the county of Lincolnshire. The content of the consultation includes objectives, measures and the maps of flood risk areas, and the questions also cover what is new for the second cycle of plans such as Flood Plan Explorer and supporting the National Flood and Coastal Erosion Risk Management Strategy. Comments and guidance from members of this committee will be welcomed in preparation for the submission deadline of the 21st of January 2022. I would just also like to note that Morgan Ray from the Environment Agency, who is also on the call today, may also wish to comment from the agency's point of view and assist with any questions that members may have. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I was going to say good morning to Morgan at the next junction, but I'll say good morning now to him. So thank you very much. I'd like to invite members of the committee to comment on this item. Have we got any people showing that they wish to ask a question? Okay, right. Would that be... Oh, Councillor Brooks.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered if Morgan could, if he could, please expand on the sort of what they're looking at in their areas of responsibility, because they have got flood risk identified in the plan in their responsible areas, and I was just wondering if he could enlighten us a bit on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks. Yes, indeed, they do have the responsibilities. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Morgan, can you respond for us with an answer? Thank you.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm not quite sure of the exact focus of the question, other than to say obviously the Environment Agency does have responsibilities for flood risk around Main River, and for coastal flood risk management, and for flood risk from identifying flood risk from reservoirs and the like. So the plans, I would say, are really important for helping sort of drive forward programs of work, and the consultation will really help sort of identify areas where perhaps members might feel are not included. But they are important parts of. It's an important part of the work that we do, and I would encourage members to look at the consultation.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, right. I'd like to move that the committee receives the report and request that the comments that Councillor Brooks has made are taken into account as well. Does anybody dissent from this, please, at this juncture? No? Okay, thank you. That is agreed. So, moving on to item 8, which is an update on the Black Sluice pumping station project in Boston. This item you'll find on your agenda packs from pages 35 to 40 and considers a report by the Environment Agency that provides an update on the progress to make the decommissioned Black Sluice pumping station in Boston safe and the opportunities for local partners to repurpose the site as a local amenity. This report will be presented by Morgan Ray, our Environment Agency appointee, and the committee is invited to consider and comment on this report. So, since we've made our introductions, Morgan, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. I do have a presentation here. Yeah, it's there. That's great. Thank you. So we'll like I say, Morgan Ray, I'm the Area Flood and Coastal Risk Manager for the Environment Agency, covering in the large part Greater Lincolnshire. So we'll move on to the first slide, please. Okay, so this is looking into the Black Sluice pumping station complex and an update on the decommissioning and repurposing work and the operation of the site there. So as a recap, in 2012, the Environment Agency led a study called the Black Sluice Catchment Works with the aim of understanding better the flood risk in the South 40-foot system. At the time, the study included detailed modelling and economic assessment of a range of options there, but closely linked to the role of the Black Sluice pumping station. So we looked at the evidence closely then, and it showed that the gravity sluice and the dual purpose lock, which are the structures you can see to the left of the station if you look at that photograph, play an important role of managing flood risk to people and property. But the actual pumps didn't have a great deal of effect from that study. Only a negligible benefit to protecting agricultural land as well. I noticed there's a hand up there, Chairman. I don't know if you want to take questions as you go.
Okay. Whose hand?
I'd rather wait till the end.
Okay, that's fine. I'll carry on.
Yes, I have it on good authority that Councillor Richard Ashton would like to be involved in this discussion. So I think it's over to you, Richard, next. Can you hear us all right?
Let Morgan complete his... I'll come in after Morgan's finished, if I may. Thank you.
Okay. Right, we'll conform with your wishes, Councillor Ashton. So back to you, please, Morgan.
Thank you. I'll continue to the end then. So, following the study and some formal consultation, the Environment Agency and Black Sluice IDB, we took forward two options. One was to transfer the pumping station to the IDB, and the other one was to decommission the asset. So in March 2018, Black Sluice IDB confirmed that the cost to refurbish the pumps outweighed the resultant benefit for flood risk and land drainage purposes, and were unable to justify the business case to do so. So in October 2018, the partnership announced a formal decommissioning of the pumps at the Anglian RFCC meeting, Anglian Northern RFCC meeting. And so the focus for our attention would be on managing the fluvial flows through the lock gate and through the sluice, and we would look at repurposing the station as a community amenity if that was feasible. So we go on to the next slide, please. So the pumps have now been commissioned. The Environment Agency remain as the owners of the site. So at the moment, we're undertaking a full scoping of the decommissioning. And I think, as you can see from that photograph, there is quite a lot of infrastructure there to decommission, make safe, and make watertight. If you consider there are pumping lines underneath the pumping station, there's a large amount of civils work under the pumping station which we need to inspect and understand how we will decommission that. There's a large weed screen there with various other supplementary utilities that serve the site as well. So it will be quite an extensive project to decommission fully the site. There are funding challenges around that. We have various Treasury rules to follow, which make funding of this type of work very difficult. And we need to look into future ownership of the site. So we're now in the second phase of scoping and designing what that sort of decommissioning looks like and how much it will cost. And we need to make the site safe for future use. So we go on to the next slide, please. So as you can see, it's quite a cavernous space inside. We really want to maintain the wow factor for future use. It's rather sort of a cathedral-like as you go in, and there really is that sort of, this could be a really sort of fantastic space going forward. So we're working with partners to facilitate those investigations into future use for the site, and if feasible, support delivery of works to repurpose it as a local amenity. Once the building's been made safe, the proposal is for a competent organisation or business to take ownership of the management of the buildings and to redevelopment the site, perhaps to align with the Boston Town Plan or take into account wider opportunities. There's various different opportunities such as sort of the levelling up agenda and opportunities such as the Towns deal. So it is a heritage site that's recognised by lots of people. On the 15th of September, there was a Heritage Open Day, which was well attended, with various tours around to look at the engines there. We aim to keep the oldest pumps at the centre of the attraction, possibly using the site as a bistro. We've had designs for holiday lets and visitor centre, which would offer educational opportunities, which could be connected with climate change, the environment, and how flood risk is managed for the surrounding area. There could also be potential link-ups with such as a stopping off point on the National Cycle Network. So there's lots of opportunities which the partnership has been discussing and looking into, and it would make a good site for any of those activities or a combination of those activities. And we'll go on to the next slide, please. Final slide, I think. So I think quite importantly, the Environment Agency continue to maintain the sluice and lock gate. So in normal levels, the gravity sluice on the top photo there, it's the gate to the left there. We continue to operate that in normal flows to manage the flow from the south 40 foot into the Witham there. In high flows, we've got the option then of using the dual purpose lock, which is the tunnel to the right there, and we can gravitate large amounts of water out through there. We actually look as well to work with the IDB very closely to see if we can lower the levels in the south 40 foot drain to enable us to sort of build up the capacity within that as well, to make the system more efficient. And we found this to be an effective and efficient method, particularly over recent high water levels over the last winter. It's a site we do take very seriously. We've recently completed a £1 million refurbishment of the site. and we're also sort of scoping out for future work around the gravity sluice as well. I think what's important here to emphasise is that we do have very sort of close working with Black Sluice IDB. Was pleased to present last week at Black Sluice IDB board meeting and about the sort of the cooperation that we have in our sort of emergency procedures, and hopefully that was well received. Also, it's probably worth noting that sort of recent desilting as well is added to the by Black Sluice IDB is added to the effectiveness of the site there. So yeah, close partnership working is very much the way forward for the site, both in terms of the day-to-day operation and the future repurposing of the site. So I'll be pleased to take any further questions.
Thank you, Morgan. I have to say, during the presentation, it's clear to see the hard work that this station has done for many years too. Inviting members, I understand now we've got two. So first of all, to Councillor Austin from Boston Borough, would you like to ask your question for debate, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Morgan, for your presentation. I'd first of all like to stress that the prominence and iconic nature of this building, it's certainly would be a terrible, terrible shame to see it demolished, and it is opposite the Haven barrier, so it does get opportunities for getting the message across about and it to be working models of the Haven barrier to be in that building and so on. Right, I've got two questions. The first one is if the EA is having difficulty with funding the large decommissioning costs due to DEFRA rules, would it help for the partners involved with the project to make approaches to DEFRA?
Well, obviously we're investigating all forms of funding for the decommissioning and for the investigation work around that. I think as a public servant, I couldn't implore you to lobby DEFRA. That's probably within your gift to be able to do that. So I couldn't really comment on and make any sort of recommendation on that front.
Thank you. My second question has several parts, but I'll put it all together because they are interconnected. Several of the major flood projects in Holland feature a visitor information centre. Would you agree that with the EA it has a duty to inform the public about major capital investments such as the Haven tidal barrier, as is done in the Netherlands? And carrying on, do you believe that when hopefully the Black Sluice pumping station is opened as a major visitor centre for the county, it should feature information about the nearby barrier, including a scale model and videos? And carry on from that, will the EA consider providing these and making an annual financial contribution to help make the project sustainable?
So the first sort of question there around the sort of duty to deliver information about capital works. I mean, we don't actually have a legal duty to do that, but obviously we do like to promote the work that we do around our capital projects, such as the Boston barrier. And I think we did actually have a hub in Boston that was open every Wednesday throughout the project, which was attended fairly well. For that Wednesday, whether it would be enough to open it up, for sort of 5 days a week or 6 days a week, probably not. Probably the one day was probably enough, I think. But we, like I say, we do like to have information about schemes that we've delivered. It would be if it did get developed as a visitor attraction, we would be keen to look at what materials we could put in there around flood risk management for Boston and the wider area. It's always good to get across to people to be aware of flood risk, and as the chairman said in his sort of introduction there, looking at how communities can be more resilient going forward. So certainly that is could be an opportunity to help promote that. We also have to bear in mind, though, on the costs that any funding that we did put to such a initiative would have to come out of our sort of maintenance budgets for maintaining flood defences and flood risk assets. So we would have to look at that very closely to ensure that we weren't impacting on our maintenance works elsewhere. But we would be keen to understand, if there was, anything that we could put in the site, if it was a visitor centre, to help educate people around around flood risk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that Boston Heritage is particularly close to yourself, and also to Councillor Alison Austin as well. Moving on to our next question is from Councillor Spratt. So over to, beg your pardon, Councillor Brooks. Trying to read your longhand from Kyra. I've worked out is not a good idea. Apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm another member with strong connections with the area, a member from the Boston area, and I'd like to thank Morgan for the presentation, and say how pleased I am at the direction that we're going now with the Black Sluice pumping station in looking to retain the pumps and the building there for the heritage value, and I believe there is a great deal, as has been outlined in the paper, that can be done there to allow that to be kept to explore and maintain that heritage for posterity. The other thing I would also like to confirm is that the EA are working very, very closely with the Black Sluice Internal Drainage Board. I'm a member on the Black Sluice Internal Drainage Board, as is Councillor Austin, who was just speaking earlier, and we are working closely in working on the operation of the nav lock and the sluice in tandem with each other in high rainfall events, and so pleased with how that is going as well. And really, my comments are all in support of how we are moving forward with this, Chairman. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. Your comments and sentiments are noted. Councillor Ashton, please.
Thank you. A question to begin with. I mean, I appreciate that this is a fantastic opportunity, fantastic idea, and I'm delighted to see that there is a will to preserve the building and also the some of the pumps and engines that are in there. It's quite remarkable how little work any of them have ever really done over the course of their lifetime. Just a question on car parking and land availability. The intended uses, I imagine, hopefully will result in considerable numbers of visitors, but appreciating that this site has practically no car parking of its own, there is a large shop next door with a very large and arguably underused car park. Is there any prospect of securing car parking, or what are the envisaged solutions around that? So I feel it is actually key to the viability of the site. I will come up, there are a couple of bits I'll come back to if I can after that, please.
Okay, how about the question on car parking then, Morgan?
Okay, so obviously, like you say, it is a confined site there with limited space outside. The car parking arrangements and indeed sort of sustainable transport arrangements to the site would very much something that would be considered by the board, which is looking at the repurposing. So I will certainly take that back to the board. We've not addressed it as yet, but it is certainly something that which we would want to address going forward. As a resilient sort of sustainable site. One of the things that we're sort of looking at as well is potential for sort of cycling connections, so sustainable transport and that sort of thing. So very much looking to the future with that respect. It's important to note that it won't be the Environment Agency that's taking forward the future use of the building. We will be looking to, at some stage, pass it on to another body, and one of the things that we're doing is looking at various different options for that. It's not a building that we can keep on our books for forever and a day, so it's really important that we do find an alternative sort of, I suppose, owner for the building going forward. So we look for certainly partnership support to enable us to do that going forward. Thank you.
Okay, coming back again, Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, my point on sustainability, I think, are relevant as much to the body looking to take this forward. I don't wish to be excessively cynical, but I'm probably going to be anyway. If this is reliant on sustainable transport and cycling, it will go bust. Where it's located, it is going to be dependent on people, heaven forfend, going to it by a motor car. If it's to have any prospect of being properly viable as an attraction or as a venue. And it's just with that in mind, again, I'm really, really pleased that there is the wish to keep some of those engines in situ. The view of any pumping station when you go in the doors is that cathedral-like impact. If, however, some or any of the engines do have to come out of there as part of the repurposing, could I ask that consideration is given to offering any of those engines to other risk management authorities, drainage boards, on a preferential basis in case some of those, that effectively parts availability for this kind of equipment is incredibly difficult. Witham Forth Drainage Board, which I'm privileged to be a member of, has recently benefited from the Museum of Internal Fire making available parts on a similar preferential basis. It would be a shame, as I say, to see any of these components go to possibly to scrap when they could well be very, very valuable to colleagues somewhere else in the industry. Alternatively, there are museums that might be able to make use of them if they have to come out as well. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Ashton. Morgan, would you like to sum up, please? Thank you.
Well, certainly on the reuse of pumps, I think one of the issues with refurbishing pumps of this age, is that they're so old, and parts for them are very, very rare. So I think they would be well sought after. Particularly in with local IDBs and local risk management authorities, if similar pumps existed to use as replacements or spare parts. So certainly that would be something which would be considered at that time. Just on the car parking, just going back to that, I think. We are considering sort of the use for sort of disabled spaces, and there would be some disabled parking. I think where the diesel tanks are now, so adjacent to that, and we would look at sort of neighbouring properties as well to sort of understand what elements of their parking space could be used for the site. So it could be arranged to come up with some agreement with sort of neighbouring properties for that use. So that could be part of those thoughts going forward. So overall, it's an exciting time coming up with. It's going to be an important year next year as we understand from the scoping work and some of the decommissioning preparation work exactly what decommissioning will have in store for us. We will be doing some sort of surveys and inspections of some of the equipment underneath the site, and that will really point us in the direction of exactly what money we will need to spend on the full decommissioning. So yeah, exciting year ahead. I agree. You know, we do need to work in partnership, and we are working in partnership successfully with Black Sluice IDB to manage the levels going forward. So, so yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Morgan. Do I have any of the speakers, Karen? No. Okay. So I move that we receive this report and request that a further update on the repositioning of the site, including the considerations and concerns as to the car parking. Do I have anyone that dissents? Nobody indicating, so thank you. That is agreed. Now, moving on to item 9, the investigations undertaken under Section 19 of the Flood and Water Management Act of 2010. This item you'll find in your agenda packs from 41 to 44 and considers an update on the status of all current flood investigations being undertaken in the county. The report will be presented by Paul Brooks, our flood risk manager, who is attending today via Teams. Yes, it's good to see you, Paul, and welcome. So the actions that the committee is invited to view, the current list of the completed and active flood investigations online at the address advertised on page 41 of the report, and to inform Democratic Services in advance if they wish to raise any particular sites at forthcoming committee meetings. So good to see you again, Paul, and over to you for presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The paper before you will be a familiar format, but for this meeting I wanted to try and give some emphasis on the purpose of the flood investigations. Members will be aware, of course, that it's a duty placed on the authority to carry out the flood investigations and to publish the results. But over and above this duty, the County Council also puts forward recommendations for work to mitigate future flooding. And this feeds into individual risk management authority work programmes, so not just the County Councils, but all our risk management authority partners. There's local schemes which are jointly delivered by partners of the Flood Risk Management Partnership, and the Council's own capital programme, which of course relies on partnership funding as well. The latter two categories are recorded in the Common Works programme, which is published online annually and updated mid-year. Increasingly, the record of flood investigations, together with the near-miss database being developed, feeds into other areas of work such as development management, operational decision making by our partners, and the County Council's own projects such as the property flood resilience assistance trial, which launched last month. I should like to remind members that until the recommended works have been completed and the relevant report, until the recommended works have been completed, the relevant report will continue to be shown as incomplete in the published records, even though the investigation report itself is complete. I would encourage members to view the interactive mapping, which the Chairman referred to in his introduction, and it's easily accessible from the link in the report, or can be found quite easily just by visiting the County Council website. And there you can inspect the status of individual investigations. And Chairman, if members have questions about specific investigations, I'll be pleased to assist outside this meeting.
Thank you very much, Paul. So, do we have any members, Cara, indicating speak? No, you're shaking your head on that. I think from my own point of view, on page 42, the graphic line that has had very much a hiatus sort of 2020, it's good to see that things have with climate change and everything else have settled down somewhat, but I appreciate and understand the amount of work that goes into some of these investigations, And of course, the whole purpose of these works is the fact that we learn from situations and do everything we can to see that they don't represent themselves for the peril of other people in the future. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm trying to compare it to the equivalent report for last time round. Last time round, we said we had 25 properties affected and 21 investigations commissioned. And this time, I can only see 36 investigations. So that's another 15. Yeah, another 15 investigations started since September. Am I comparing like with like? Or if not, there's a table has disappeared since the last time round as well. Can you explain the difference between the 21 that was mentioned last time and the 36 mentioned this time 2 months later?
Chairman, if I may, the figures given in this report relate to Q2 this year. So where I mention the number of investigations which were commenced in Q2 were 13 investigations affecting 16 properties, bringing the total to the year to 35. So that's 13 in addition to the 22 reported at the previous meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner, Chairman, I understand you have a question next.
Well, I was just going to thank Paul and his team for the amount of work that's gone in there. It's not just the reports that we see listed, but all of the partnership now feed in the near misses, and that data itself is very useful and can be found by drilling down on the interactive. And well done, team. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner.
Yes, thank you. I echo those sentiments entirely, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Austin, next.
Thank you, Chairman. Is the multi-agency scheme in Curtin due to commence in in January? Is that all on track? It's a big scheme.
Matthew, I understand you can help furnish us with an answer.
I can provide a little detail on that, as that's a scheme that was identified as part of the Development Fund for flooding investigations and drainage repairs. It's one of the largest schemes being delivered under that programme, being led by our Technical Services Partnership. The scheme has grown in size to deal with wider issues across the village of Curtin, and currently that is programmed to commence in early 2022. There are some details being finalised at the moment, which means I'm afraid I can't provide an exact date, but we are still anticipating being on site. I'm advised in early 2022 to deliver that scheme. So yes, it is very much in programme to be delivered.
Thank you. Any other? With that, Cara? Okay, so I move that we receive the report and the hard work that goes into it, and note the progress of work being undertaken by the service. Does anybody dissent from that? Indicating no. Therefore, thank you. That is agreed. Moving on to item 10. It looks to me as my voice is going to be nearly as much as Morgan Ray's, to be fair, this morning. So, the Environment Agency update. This is a regular item on the report and updates the committee on the Environment Agency's activities. Morgan Ray will make a presentation, and the committee is invited to consider and comment on the detail contained within the presentation. Therefore, Morgan, with no further ado, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Again, yes, just a quick verbal update from myself over our main capital works, which are going on at the moment. So, firstly, from our Trent colleagues at Torksey on the River Trent, we've just completed a £1.5 million scheme there which will protect 457 properties from flooding from the River Trent. And it also avoids around about £60,000 of damages as well. So good value for money from that scheme. We're about to commence our Salt Fleet to Gibraltar Point beat management sort of preparations again for the following season. So as a recap, that helps to protect 20,000 houses, nearly 30,000 static caravans, and 35,000 hectares of prime agricultural land. So that's something we do every year, and the preparations are kind of all year round. So we're carrying on with that for this year. We continue to deliver the Wainfleet flood action plan. So as a recap, so that's based on 4 different themes. So the first one's managing the flow, and as part of that theme, Lindsey Marsh Drainage Board are aiming to complete the desilting work, which was started last year in January. COVID restrictions aside, obviously the dredger has to come from Holland, so obviously we'll be looking closely at that. There's the floodwater storage theme, looking at things such as natural flood management in the upper catchment. We've just completed a large study on looking at the potential for natural flood management in the upper catchment, and identified a whole series of measures and sites where that would be possible. And now we're looking at putting the funding in place through the RFCC to deliver some of that funding over the coming years. Around the community resilience theme, we've just completed, or we are in the process of updating our flood warning model, and that will help us to improve our flood warning service for the community, to provide timely warnings and more accurate warnings going forward. And finally, managing the raised defences. As a reminder, there's 52 kilometres of embankments within the steeping system. So we have approximately a £3.2 million project to look at the resilience of those defences going forward, with a view to carrying out works over the coming years to improve on that. At the moment, we're just completing we're carrying out our business case work around that, and looking at with partners about what measures we can put in to make those flood defences more resilient going forward. There's quite a significant event for Boston on the 7th of November, in that the Boston Barrier was operated for the first time, as a result of a forecast for high tides or a tidal surge. So we operated that as I said, on the night of the 7th of November. And actually, as its peak, there was a 3.7 metre difference between the downstream and the upstream sides. So it did its job, and that was a successful sort of trial for the barrier and its operation. There's still work to do in Boston around the barrier. So we've got to do some work around the wet dock entrance over the coming year, to install gates to the wet dock entrance that will protect another 424 properties. So work's carrying on around the Boston Barrier project. We're just commencing our Lower Witham flood resilience project, and this is looking at the various different assets and flood defences between Lincoln and Boston. This will take some years to come to fruition, because over the coming year we need to complete surveys and carry out modelling to understand where we need to focus our attentions, as similar to Wainfleet, to make those flood defences more resilient, and to make the communities behind them more resilient to future flooding. We've got a similar project which has been kicked off at Sleaford. So looking at the various different structures throughout the town, we have several ageing tilting weirs throughout Sleaford, which provide a good amount of flood protection for the town, but we need to make sure that they're resilient going forward into the future. So that scheme's just kicked off with survey work being undertaken at the moment. I think we're going to come back at a future meeting potentially to talk about the Lincoln flood defences, because we've just in our process of completing around about £6 million worth of work for Lincoln itself, which will protect around nearly 2,000 houses. The latest works to be complete are on the Fosdyke Canal. We've just completed a series of piling work there, which was done throughout the summer, and we're pleased to say that was little impact on the sort of the boating community there, and indeed on the residents where we were piling next to. If you walk down Sinsel Dyke at the moment, you'll see that we're carrying out quite extensive piling works on the Sinsel Dyke. Really impressive sort of piling rigs going in there to protect the banks and the flood defences there, which were showing signs of deterioration on that sort of vital sort of flood relief channel through Lincoln. The work in Lincoln is due for completion in 2022. I'll be pleased to come back to the committee to give a sort of a wider presentation in the future about the work we've done there. Finally, going back to Boston again, we commenced a project there looking at the tidal defences between the barrier and the Grand Sluice gates there. There's the town, despite the barrier, still relies on its traditional flood defences between those two locations, and we have some work to bring those up to sort of modern standards. So we're looking to spend around about £4.7 million between those two locations going forward. We just commenced with some site survey there, and that will contribute to protecting a further 900 homes there. And finally, the Boston sort of downstream works. So this is works downstream of the barrier towards the Wash on the Boston Haven there. That work's largely complete. I think there's some minor works to finish off over the coming year, but again, that goes towards protecting a further 900 homes there. So quite a lot of work going on from our capital works. Again, all our sort of usual maintenance activities are ongoing, and we continue to prepare for working with our emergency response colleagues. We talked recently about the pumps from the fire service. Part of that is working closely with the fire service around our sort of multi-agency response, understanding each other's roles for emergency situations. So that sort of training continues, and we continue to update things like our flood warning areas. So and flood mapping. So lots of work going on throughout the county, both on the ground and in the background to help make the county more resilient for flooding. So I'll take any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, well, that was a whistle-stop itinerary to sort of follow through. Thank you very much. So do we have any speakers questioning for debate? One online? Mr. Chairman, sir, apparently you'd like to come in. Thank you.
Yes, that was quite a whistle-stop tour. I was just looking for reassurances from Morgan that the additional security was going to provide insurance companies with reassurance, let's say, to stop banging the prices up or even refusing in the area. And that's one thing. And the other item was, he mentioned boaters, but a lot of boaters have been quite upset with the amount of weed on the river this year. What we're going to do for next? Thank you.
So the first question around insurance is a pertinent one, and I know one that affects many areas. So the Environment Agency doesn't have any sort of say over the sort of insurance premiums. Insurance companies are at liberty to use what information they like. They're a commercial organisation. However, I was pleased probably a couple of months ago now to sort of sign off the change for the flood map for Boston as a result of the barrier work. So obviously, part of that £100 million investment, you know, one of the benefits of that is that you will see a material change to things like our flood map going forward. And, you know, when people click on their flood risk, they will get a different answer for a large part of Boston now. That evidence is there for insurance companies to take note of if they so wish. Your second point about weed, yeah, I mean, this summer has seen weed growth, incredible amounts of weed growth throughout Lincolnshire, beyond in North Lincolnshire as well. The Yancombe has been particularly badly affected, and it affects mostly boaters. I think sort of angling communities as well. Obviously, we need to make sure that our sluices are free running from weed. But apart from that, the weed doesn't cause a huge, greatly enhanced flood risk, the floating weed, that is. So I think what we found is with the recent sort of high water events, that has flushed through a large amount of the weed. But it's something we'll keep a sort of a close eye on, and I believe we'll work closely with partners such as the Canals and River Trust to look at ways that we can manage that. In other parts of the country, you know, we've looked at things such as using sort of things like weevils which eat the weed, which is potentially something we could look at more in this area.
Thank you for that. I just implore everybody to use more environmentally friendly wash products. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for your kindly advice. Councillor Austin from Boston Borough, I believe you have a question. Thank you.
It was a legacy hand, I'm afraid. I couldn't get rid of it.
Don't worry, that's absolutely fine. Anybody else, Cairo? No? Okay, fine. So I move that we receive the update offered by the Environment Agency and note the progress of the works that are undertaken in Lincolnshire. Does anybody dissent from that? I don't see anybody. Therefore, thank you very much. That is agreed. Moving on to item 11 this morning, members. So we've got Angling Water update. This item enables Angling Water to provide an update to the committee on recent work undertaken. I understand that Jonathan Glurham from Angling Water is online with us. The committee is invited to consider and comment on the detailed content contained in Jonathan's presentation. So over to you and welcome.
Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. Can you see my slides yet?
2 seconds, we're nearly there.
No worries. I've only got a couple, so it won't take me long.
Two seconds are long ones. I've seen them once, but they've gone. There we go. Thank you very much. Back over to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carl. Right, next slide, please. So yeah, good morning all. I think most people know me. I'm Jonathan Glurham from Angling Water. I'm our regional flood risk manager, so I lead all our kind of strategic flood risk management work across the whole of our region. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of things this morning. You will have seen this slide from the last meeting. So and I just wanted to focus on the light blue circles you can see there. Those light blue circles are the locations where we're working with the National Flood Forum. So we have funded the National Flood Forum to go and work with those particular communities to try and increase flood resilience across the community and wherever possible create flood action groups. So just working from north to south, the top one is up in Tetney, then it's Louth, Ingermells, Scotwick, and then Long Bennington. Now if I just let explain what the National Flood Forum have been doing over the last few months. So, and I'll just work through each of those communities just quickly. So in Tetney, they've been out and conducted their initial walkovers, but they're trying to identify kind of residents of the community who need their support. We know there are a number of people across Tetney that could certainly use the support of the National Flood Forum, but it's been, I believe, a bit more tricky for them to come forward at the moment. So the National Flood Forum will continue to work closely with them and see what they can do. In Louth, they've undertaken walkovers, in particular with platform housing, and identified the risk of flooding to their residential kind of buildings. And also spoken to a number of other residents across Louth as well that are at flood risk, and looking at where they can possibly create a flood action group. In Ingermells, just initial identification of kind of flood risk areas has been undertaken so far. So no walkovers there yet, and no engagement with the community on the ground, but that will come in due course. Scotwick's probably where they've done most work so far, and that aligns with the innovation work that we talked about earlier. Scotwick's one of the communities that will probably be a big part of that innovation work. So the National Flood Forum have done a number of walkovers in Scotwick, both with ourselves, with the parish council and their chair, and also with local residents. And working with them at the moment to create their own flood action group. So, and I think that's probably the area that is probably most advanced of the five. And then in Long Bennington, they've engaged with a number of residents there, and the residents there have actually offered themselves to set up their own flood action group. So they've kind of come forward with that idea rather than it coming from the National Flood Forum, which is really great. So, and obviously the National Flood Forum will support them with that. So. So there's obviously still a lot to do across those communities, and obviously ourselves and other risk management authorities will support with that wherever we can. So, but I just thought that was it's an element of the work that I think probably goes under the radar quite a bit, and I thought it was important just to raise that today, so that you're aware of what we're doing with with other organisations. In this case, a national charity to support the communities across Lincolnshire. And can I have the next slide, please? My last one. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of quick case studies or examples of some of the things that we've done since the last meeting. So I believe Langworth was discussed at the last meeting, and I thought it'd just be useful to give a bit of an update. So since that last meeting, we've had a site visit, and I think a number of people in the room have attended that as well as ourselves. And my colleague Matthew Moore is on the line today as well, who I know was in attendance at that meeting. So. And I know a lot was discussed there about, the risk to the residents there and how we might take that forward. So some of the things are the plan. So we've agreed that we'll put a number of flow monitors on our network to understand, where those flows are coming from and how we might control those. But from talking to colleagues, I understand that we really need further discussions between all the key stakeholders here. In particular, to sort of better understand how the Barling Zoo is then affecting what's happening in Nettle and Beck, and apologies for the typos here, but and then how that then affects the kind of local drainage system, so both ours and the highway system. So I think we just need to sort of gather together again to work out how best to take that forward. But I think if there are surface water management opportunities in the village, then clearly that's something that we can't do in isolation ourselves. We'll need to work together with others. So, but obviously we're very happy to explore that. And if there are partnership opportunities there, then there may be opportunities for funding to come forwards towards that as well. So, and then in Metheringham, this is a really interesting example because in this one village, we've actually got three separate pieces of work ongoing at the moment. Total value of that work is probably over £1 million. So one is WINEP is the Water Industry National Environment Programme. So that's where we do works to ensure the kind of quality of water. In this case, the quality of water that's discharged from our water recycling centre in the village. Then we've recently completed some works around Park Crescent. So if anyone knows the area, they will have seen us around there doing some work to divert some of the flows in the sewers and get some additional storage and non-return valves on the system. And then we've got another big piece of work across the village to try and disconnect downpipes that we know are connected onto the foul sewer. So these are downpipes from people's roofs that have the rainwater pipes connected directly to the foul sewer network. So that then obviously lends itself to problems when it does rain, which could either be flooding, either internally or externally to people's properties. The inability to use the toilets when it rains heavily, and also impacts at the water recycling centre. So obviously, if we can get that surface water out and get it back, into the surface water drainage systems or back into the local kind of water courses in the area, then that would have huge benefit across the village. So yeah, it's just a really interesting example of some of the work we're doing, and just shows that even in one village there's quite a bit going on. So Chair, I'll leave it there for now, and obviously very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So yes, I had a feeling that Councillor Fleetwood might be.
I thought
I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. It's Councillor Baxter first. Thank you. Apologies, Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if it's an item for this agenda item or the next one, but is it possible to have an update on the South Lincolnshire Reservoir?
Yeah, it probably is an update for the next meeting, Councillor Baxter. So I think I'm involved on the edges of that work, but what we could do is probably speak to Water Resources East, and in particular Robin Price, who's kind of leading and chairing the work on the South Links work. So very happy to try and set that up if that would be helpful, Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, we'll remember that for the next item. So, Councillor Fleetwood.
Yes, I'd like to thank the Environment Agency for putting together the meeting with myself and LCC at Langworth. I think it was very much appreciated. We did go and see a lady that had been flooded previously. She has got a very nice property there. She's got fish in a koi pond in the back garden, and all of that did suffer over a period of time. I have seen those bungalows at that location flooded to the depth of a windowsill in previous years. So, it is a critical point. And obviously with the new Anglian water infrastructure in there, it was explained clearly why some of it hadn't functioned during that recent scenario. But it's how we work out of it and how we make the village more efficient and the drainage system more efficient over a period of time. So yeah, just to put it on record, thanks to the Environment Agency. And sorry, to Anglian Water, not the Environment Agency this time.
Thank you very
Borrowed
much.
my teeth off the dog today, yes.
Okay, that's not the first time that you've reminded us of that particular situation. I know it's something that's really, really close to your heart, and you're trying your level best to help those concerned. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I understand you would like to come in next. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really good report, Jonathan. Really pleased to see that we've got lots going on and it's making a difference to people. Came up, I think Water Resources East was mentioned. I was lucky enough to see Peter Simpson's presentation at COP26, and this project is now really taking hold and getting national interest. It's about time. We've heard all about flood problems, but water is a resource, and we start to need to treat it as a resource. We need to start to be able to move it around to where it's needed. But just like energy and food, there's always going to be a debate. I think where people need water locally, and it's required elsewhere, that same debate will exist. But really well done, raising Anglian Water, raising the profile of Lincolnshire and surrounding areas, and also it's kind of nice to realise that you're, regarding waste, which you mentioned, you're one of the best water companies in the country. Thank you.
Yes, for the advert, love every drop, Chairman, I'm sure. Councillor Clark, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Jonathan, just sneaking one in, you said you had Matthew Moore online. Could he give me a quick update on what's happening with the flooding in Hall Drive, Lincoln, please?
Matthew, are you there?
I'm here, Jonathan. Yeah, that's. Can you hear me?
Can hear you. Can't really see you, but I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Anglian Water have developed a partnership scheme alongside Lincolnshire County Council to clear the blocked privately owned surface water system that drains both the Anglian Water surface water system and the highway system in Hall Drive. That's a total scheme value of about £37,000. With the majority of that coming actually from Lincolnshire County Council through Paul Brooks's funding, and also Richard Fennick, who's contributed some as well. But as I say, that's a partnership funding scheme to first of all clear the blockage of routes, but also reline the culvert to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Thank you, Matthew. I should have mentioned actually, Chair, if I may. So Matthew, many of you will know Matthew from his time working within our kind of water recycling operational team, but he's left that team now to come and join me in a kind of, I suppose, more strategic sort of focus, in particular looking at our partnership funding work. So for those of you that aren't aware, we have a dedicated pot of funding to work in partnership with other risk management authorities across the whole of the Anglian region. And Matthew's new role will be focusing on delivering that work, and the kind of Hall Road is a fantastic example of what we can do, you know, collaboratively working together, where if we try to do it in isolation, we probably wouldn't get anywhere. So it's a really great example of what we can do to work together. And I'm sure Matthew will say the same, but, you know, we always encourage anybody that's got ideas of where we can work, you know, collaboratively, you know, with yourselves, that, you know, either through the Lead Local Flood Authority team or the Highways team, to work with ourselves to try and solve, you know, ongoing issues that customers and communities face. So, yeah, always happy to have that discussion and, yeah, take that forward wherever we can.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baxter, you wanted to come back on this occasion?
Thank you, Chair. We've heard a lot in the news lately about the discharge of effluent into the river network. To what extent is that a problem in Lincolnshire?
It's difficult for me to be able to quantify that, you know, off the top of my head. What I would say is, you know, absolutely, there's been a huge amount of press coverage about, you know, the impact that storm overflows have on the environment. And, you know, I'll be the first to say, and this is, you know, absolutely kind of company position, you know, we are custodians of the environment. We want to be, want to ensure that, you know, we leave it in a better state than we found it. So we want to and are working as hard as possible to minimise the impact that storm overflows have on the wider environment. I suppose the nuance that's maybe lost in some of the debates in the press is, you know, there are very much two sides to this coin, and obviously the pertinent part of for this group is that, you know, those storm overflows are there to stop people from flooding, and that doesn't necessarily come through in that debate. So, you know, we are very, very conscious of the impact that they have, and we want to minimise that as much as possible. But equally, we need to be realistic about the fact that, you know, if tomorrow we went and closed all those overflows, well, then we'd have huge numbers of people that would suffer in a completely different way, and dare I say it, in a worse way that, you know, impacts their properties directly with combined and foul sewage, you know, flooding their homes. So Yes, we need to try and find a way to reduce the impact and wherever possible remove those combined overflows that are discharging to the environment. But equally, we need to understand what would happen if we do close those off and what the wider impact would be. I don't know whether everybody saw, but the figure that's been worked out to close all of the overflows across England is up to about £650 billion. So we have to also ask ourselves, is it the right way to spend that money, or are there other ways that we can protect the environment, use innovation to try and reduce the impact that those spills have, and in particular focus on those combined sewer overflows that are having the biggest detriment. So, not all of them will be having such a big impact on the environment, but there are a number that will be spilling frequently, and there will be a number that we really need to deal with, and those are the ones that really need our focus at the moment. So those that are having the biggest impact on the environment. That's not to say that we don't want to look at all of them over time, but we need to be conscious of what it costs to fix the problem, not only the actual money that it costs to do that, but then the disruption of almost kind of replumbing our towns and cities to redrain them in the correct way. So, there's a lot to consider there, but the committee can be absolutely kind of assured that it's a huge focus for us at the moment, and we will continue to find the best possible ways to reduce the impact and the harm that those overflows have on the environment.
Okay, thank you very much for a full answer, Jonathan. I think we're there, are we? Right, so I move that we note the verbal update and presentation, thank you, from Anglian Water. Do I have anybody that dissents from that? No, nobody online, therefore that is agreed. Moving on to item 12 is the Flood and Water Management Scrutiny Committee work programme, which you can find in your agendas between pages 45 and 48. Before handing over to Kyra to present this point, this is a busy time in our annual cycle, and I expect that there will be more likely for February's agenda, and then of course we jump to May. And we will have additions, I'm sure, one of which is now going to be a proposed item being the South Links Reservoir. So, over to you, Kyra. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to remind members of this committee that the work programme is there to remind you of all the work scheduled for the rest of the term, and also to advise you on items that have been requested to be considered and programmed. As such, on page 47, you will be able to see under the items to be considered and programmed. In the future, we're anticipating some updates on the riparian watercourse project, the progress and next steps, natural flood management, MOU with districts on incident response and provision of temporary resilience measures, and coastal adaptation strategy, which was moved from this month's meeting. The newest additions to the agendas prepared for the February and May meetings are item on February's agenda, item 3, red diesel ban, where we will have the opportunity to create some foresight on the anticipated impact on internal drainage boards of the red diesel ban that is due to come into effect in April. And in terms of May's meeting, we will have an opportunity to hear about the outcomes from the Digby flooding alleviation scheme that has now been completed. That concludes my update to you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee members. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much for that, Kyra. So, do I have anybody that wants to contribute to the work programme? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. Only to reiterate that we've got a project that is a mere £2 billion of expenditure into water management in Lincolnshire, being the South Lincolnshire Reservoir. Is it possible for us to have an update or an introduction or a presentation about that at some point. Thank you.
Councillor Baxter, your request was noted, and I would hope that we might be able to programme it for February, but we will programme it when we have a furnished reply, not just for convenience. Anybody else? No. Okay, fine, right. I move that we note the report and approve the existing work programme as is been today in pages 45 to 48. And so that really concludes the meeting. On behalf of the chairman, I'm sure from Boston and myself, wish everybody a very happy Christmas, and sincerely hope that both climate and weather conditions are kind to us during the next period of time. Thank you very much, and I close the meeting at whatever time it now is, but 11:54. So therefore, I've probably conformed with some members' wishes of making it a speedy and timely meeting. Thank you very much.